All right. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه والصلواته والسلامه على النبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So we are now in the 11th Juz of the Qur'an, and this is going to cover the last part of Surah al-Tawbah, and then will also make its way, it will include all of Surah al-Yunus, and then just the very beginning of Surah al-Hud. So it covers again the very last portion of At-Tawbah, all of Yunus, and then just a few ayat of Surah al-Hud. But if you look at the beginning of this juz starts on a very interesting place. And when I was reading today, preparing for this, it made me, of course, it's kind of unavoidable right now. Everything that we say, do, eat, smell, breathe, it makes us think of our situation now, in quarantine. But there's this verse towards the end of Surah al-Tawbah, actually the 100th verse of Surah al-Tawbah, where Allah says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَالسَّابِقُونَ أَوَّلُونَ مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُم بِإِحْسَانٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ وَأَعَدَّ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ. So Allah says about a certain quality of person, He said, السَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ, the forerunners, or those people who came first, مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ, from amongst the people that made the hijrah to Medina. And what's interesting, he says, min al-muhajirin. So not all of those who migrated. So it tells us, one, that people migrated in stages. Not everybody went all at the same time. And he's saying, as-sabiqun al-awwalun min al-muhajirin. Allah is then going to highlight and say something about those who were the very first people to jump on the opportunity to migrate to Medina, to assist the Prophet ﷺ in his mission, to assist him in helping him get there. And therefore, this verse tells us about procrastination. And as I said, when sitting here and reading this, this verse, or preparing, to read, for today's lesson, many of us may be having this feeling like, oh man, I was going to do A, B, and C, and then quarantine hit. Or I was going to do this, and then, COVID-19 happened. And most of us, if we're honest, the thing that we probably really wanted to do, we could have done before, but we put it off for whatever reason. And this only highlights how important it is when Allah puts good opportunities in your lap, when He puts them in your life, and when He puts them within reach. Try, inshallah, to be as-sabiqun al-awwaluna min al-muhajirin, and also from the Ansar, right? Wal Ansar, right? That there was a certain group of people who were already in a special class. Al-Muhajirun wal-Ansar, right? They were already, above the average person. But then even amongst them, there were some that maybe hesitated, and certainly if you deal with contextually what this verse is talking about, there were people that had trepidation, that had reservations, because they were really going to have to trust Allah. They were leaving behind a world that they were familiar with to one that they were not familiar with. They were going into the great unknown. And because of that, it's very human of them to maybe hesitate. And it shows that there were a few that they didn't hesitate whatsoever. And therefore they become immortalized in some way, right? In the Qur'an itself by talking about as-sabiqun al-awwaluna min al-muhajirin wal-ansar. So, inshallah, when this quarantine thing comes to an end, or at least some of the restrictions are lifted, we should think about, well, what is it that we really want to do with ourselves? It really shows that our time here is limited, and anything can happen that may debilitate you. Whether, it could be a disease that you're debilitated, or it could be like this, where even if you don't have coronavirus, you're still debilitated, right? Alhamdulillah, many of us are not, have not tested positive for COVID-19. Inshallah, may Allah protect those of us who haven't tested, will not, and those who have, may Allah Ta'ala, inshallah, give them a swift recovery. But it's a reminder that opportunities come along and they have to be seized, right? And sometimes we have to walk a very fine line in our notion of ambition as believers. There are certain types of ambition that are negative and very dunyawi. And then there are others that are not. And sometimes it can be for the same thing. A person can want to earn money, make more money. For one kind of person, that can be a very dunyawi pursuit, because it will become ghafilun, they will become amongst the heedless, and they will lose themselves. And then there's other people that see money as merely a vehicle to something else, and they will do wonderful things with it, like, benefit other people, feed the poor, so on and so on, right? So we have to think that, what are we going to do, inshallah, when Allah lifts these restrictions for us? Will we be amongst those who will strive to be min al-awwaleen, right? Those who, as-sabiqeen wal-awwaleen, will we try to strive to be those people who kind of go out the gate? And he says, وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبِعُوهُمْ بِإِحْسَانٍ. And the quality, he said, then he names two major groups, al-muhajirun, those who migrated, with the Prophet ﷺ, the Ansar, who were there to take people in, right? So our opportunity might come in a couple of different ways. We may have the opportunity to move on something, and that, inshallah, is kind of like al-muhajirun, right? That's those who, those are those who take the initiative to go into something. Then there is the al-ansar, right? The people who are the helpers. So an opportunity may come in ceasing to assist somebody, right? To assist them, to help them, to do some act of selflessness. It's not always about being the muhajir who's going on some great adventure or something like that. It might come in the form of you just being able to help somebody. And then there's a third quality that are kind of like I really don't like the term hero, so I'm not going to use that word, right? But there is a third kind of person that Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبِعُوهُمْ بِإِحْسَانٍ. That there is another kind of person that follows both of these other two, right? Those who migrated and those who helped those who migrated. The third quality is those who they follow their example, essentially, right? وَيَتَّبِعُوهُمْ بِإِحْسَانٍ. They follow them, right? And therefore we may, even if we aren't of those two illustrious groups, the helpers and the immigrants, we can be amongst those who at least try to emulate and follow their example, to jump on opportunity when it is given to us. And when we take the opportunity to do good, when Allah has given us the opportunity, whether that is good to do a deed or to assist somebody else, right? رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ, right? That Allah is pleased with them and that they are also pleased with Allah, right? We hear a lot today in the sort of new agey slogans that bounce around, right? About loving God, loving God, loving God. Well, it's very easy to love Allah. The real question is, does Allah love you? Right? So we want to be of those who are radiyallahu anhu wa radu anhu. We want to be those who not only love Allah, but most importantly and primarily that Allah is pleased with them, that Allah loves them, and that they are pleased with Allah. وَأَعَدَّ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ, right? And it's for this kind of person that Jannah has already been prepared. Right? If you seize good opportunities and do good things with them, or help other people seize opportunities for them to be the helper, right? And you do this with a spirit of ihsan, of excellence, then this is the kind of person that paradise is already prepared for. So that's from the very beginning of the juz in the 11th part. The other thing is to remember that our iman is something that has to be maintained. A lot of times we sometimes think of iman or faith as something that is bestowed upon us, there is a component to that is true, that Allah is the one that guides people and so on, but there's also a component of us that we have to be the maintainers of our faith. And there's a very interesting hadith, I won't give all of it because it's actually quite long, but just the beginning part of it, in which it's related that the Prophet ﷺ said, Yadrul Islam ka yadru wash thawb. Right? That Islam will wear away like the hem of a garment. Which imply, like if you know anything about your clothes, like when you get a brand new garment, it's wonderful. You wash it once or twice, especially the stuff that's made today, it just begins to disintegrate, right? So it has to be cleaned, it has to be mended, you might have to patch it up, right? Iman is something that has to be maintained. So Allah talks about this, and this particular verse is related to the munafiqun, to the hypocrites, or people of weak faith at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, in which Allah says, وَإِذَا مَا أُنزِلَتْ سُورَةٌ فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ أَيُّكُمْ زَادَتْهُ هَذِهِ إِيمَانًا. They say, every time a chapter of the Qur'an is revealed, every time a surah is sent down, there are some who will say, hey, did this increase any of you guys in Iman? Did this increase your faith? And sometimes I feel like today, especially where a lot of our community has been, unfortunately it's a lot like this. It's us staring into computer screens and whatnot. Alhamdulillah that we have that. But outside or before COVID-19, it seemed like our community kind of retracted a little bit, and that people were looking for the next conference to go to, the next this or that to go to try to always get some sort of artificial injection of iman, of faith, instead of just being around the believers, establishing community, meaning that you yourself, you play some role in creating community, and instead of just kind of bemoaning, well, I went to this masjid and I didn't like the way it was, or I went to this place, right? What are you doing to help, right? What am I doing? What are you doing to help, and I don't talk about myself, but I'd always tell people, I never had any intention to become imam. I had studied Islam for my own benefit. I had no intention of going into leadership or imam or anything like this. But after my daughter was born, I was very concerned about the community, because I'm like, all right, like what's going to be here for my daughter, right? I need to. So I remember making dua a lot of the times, asking Allah to, whatever I could do to help, right? And here I am. I don't know if this is, this is helping or not, if this is a solution, but here it is. So think about what you can do, right? And instead of those who are going, فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ أَيُّكُمْ زَادَتْهُمْ هَذِهِ إِيمَانًا. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَزَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَهُمْ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ, right? Those who already have iman, right, and those who are believers, right, when they encounter something of deen, it in and of itself increases their iman. They don't need a particular special, tasbih. They don't need a special prayer rug. They don't need a super special sheikh. They don't need, right, just anything that is from Allah it increases them in their iman. And I think that it's really helpful for us today to, it also puts, to be quite honest, a lot of unrealistic pressure upon, imams. So at the end of the day, man, we're we're human beings like you guys. We have families, we have faults, we have, we're just the same as other people. We have maybe a particular skill that some people don't have, but at the end of the day, we're flesh and blood like everybody else. And sometimes I feel like there's too much expectation of religious leadership, and there needs to be a little bit more pushback of religious leadership to encourage raising the general water level overall, of the awam, of just the regular average Muslim. So, don't always be looking for the epiphany. Those come and go. That's part of life, and you will not always have one. But if you're in a constant relationship with this book, if you're in a constant relationship and learning about this Prophet ﷺ, and about this deen, then you will not need those 4th of July moments to keep you going. Instead, you will just find it satisfying in and of itself. And Allah speaks to this, أَوَلَا يَرَوْنَ أَنَّهُمْ يفتنون في كل عام مرة أو مرتين ثم يتبعون ولا هم يذكرون. Right? Do they not see that that once they are tried once or twice a year, but they still don't turn back and they don't pay any heed. Right? Stop always looking for the epiphany, and instead just try to embrace Islam in the way that it's meant to be practiced. We had talked last night, I think, after most of you had jumped off. And I said, there's a great hikmah, or wisdom in Allah designing this deen that has a daily component to it, right? The prayer, for instance, the 5 daily prayers. And I felt it was worth repeating that human beings are largely habitual. We are what we do, whether that's, like our food, our health and whatnot. It's all related to how we are habitually eating our food and so on and so forth. So I think that we have to remember that this 5 daily prayers is meant to make us and formulate us in a particular way, to format us, I guess you could say, right? It wants to make us habitual in a certain way, because if it leaves it up to just what our thoughts are or only what our beliefs are internally, as we said yesterday, right? Pretty soon your beliefs are not going to be beliefs anymore, because most people are not that capable of sustaining things on their own without a routine. And that goes for anything in life. If you want to be healthy, you have to establish a new routine of exercise, or a new routine of how you cook or how you shop. If you want to, you want to change your career or go back to school, right? You're going to have to come up with some new study habits, going to bed early. You can kind of, connect the dots. But there's a real wisdom in the 5 daily prayers to make us a habitual worshiping animal, right? To make us a habitual abd of Allah through this, right? And if we embrace that aspect of it, we won't need, when the epiphany comes, mashallah, those are just wonderful moments. But when it's not there, we have our routine to fall back on to keep us right in line and keep us motivated and keep us doing, inshallah, what we need to do. So. I'll turn it over now if you guys have any questions, inshallah, before